they give a sick, you know. Why you know they call me up? I give a red light to tire.
Ah. Okay. Okay. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Let's settle down so that we can start session 3. Thank you very much for joining our session. My name is Susie Wenwabe. I'm going to be chairing this session. So we're really excited to have this session today. I'm sure you, from the previous speaker, I think this is sort of a build-up to show that, what a better way to celebrate the AEN as they turn 11 years this year, to sort of unpack and understand why relationships are important. And I think also, before we begin this session, I just want to highlight a few things. Evidence and evaluations in Africa need to have a gender and equity lens, because that is really important. And also, we have a few female leaders that are going to be speaking to us during this session. This is an all-female panel of amazing individuals that are experienced and in the idea. And also, women's voices often go unheard or under, valued in terms of the opinions that they share. And now these panelists, because they are established and have experience and expertise, so I hope you are looking forward to the discussions that we are going to have with them this afternoon. Okay. Sorry, there's a malfunction with this one. So I take it out so that it doesn't disturb my groove. Okay, for this session, because it's a celebration for the Africa Evidence Network and why relationships matter, we are going to take this opportunity to share an 8 minutes video with you of the journey of the AEN. So enjoy this video before we delve into the discussions that brought us together with this panel. Are we struggling to get the video? Okay. We'll look at the video later on as you find the video, because the 8 minutes video that is celebrating the journey of the Africa Evidence Network. Without wasting any time, I would like to, I'm not going to use the traditional way of doing things, reading my panelists' bio. So I would like them to introduce themselves and share one short story that illustrates why relationships matter to them. So that's really important to hear their stories just in the beginning of this discussion. So I think I'll start from this side to allow Rona to settle down, not to ask her to share first. Ruth?
Thank you very much, Susie Way, and congratulations to Rona. Take a breath. I'm sharing the stage with some of my heroes today, and it's such a privilege. My name's Ruth Stewart. I had the good luck of being at the very first gathering of the Africa Evidence Network 11 years ago. And I wanted to tell you a story about climbing trees. Did anyone else climb trees when they were children? Oh, yeah, people are nodding here. I had a favorite mango tree and a favorite branch at the top, and none of my siblings or friends were allowed on that branch. And I thought I was very clever because I could climb to the highest branch and nobody else could get higher than me. But I realized after a while that climbing to the highest branch on the tree was a bit lonely. And my sisters and all the other neighborhood friends would have cookies and sweets and juice at the bottom of the tree. And I would try and persuade them to throw me a snack, but I wasn't willing to give up my branch at the top of the tree. And I would go to bed sulking. And fast forward 20 years, and I started to slip into that same error in the early stages of my career. I thought I was really clever. I had a degree from a really fancy university, and I thought I knew everything. I could climb to the top of my tree and be brilliant. But can I tell you, it's really lonely at the top of the tree. And fortunately, lots of wise people around me pointed out that I was missing out on the cookies, I wasn't making friends, and I wasn't achieving anything apart from being at the top of the tree on my favorite branch. And I learned the hard way that we need to come down from our trees and make friends with one another. We need to professionally build partnerships and learn together. And success is no longer, in my mind, being at the top. In fact, it's about being at the bottom of the tree and learning to learn from one another and share. So that's my little story about why relationships matter to me, and something about my favorite childhood activity in the mango tree. So thank you very much.
Great. Thank you so much, Ruth, for that story. Maybe we can go to you, Rosette.
Thank you very much. Hello. Rosette Nabumba Naenga is my name, and I am serving as the president of the African Evaluation Association. In March 2024, I invite you to Rwanda, Kigali, for the 11th Africa Conference, and I'll vacate this seat. And I would love to have someone who is strong enough to come and sit in the seat and take Africa forward. I work in the Ministry of Finance, Planning and Economic Development in this country. Thank you very much, Ruth. That was interesting, that tree. I would like to talk about relationships in a different way, that relationships will work if they are nurtured over a longer period. Usually, short-term relationships don't deliver the objectives we need. And unfortunately, in Africa, there are few people who actually come to have long-term relationships with us. So we have to work very hard to nurture relationships. And before we go to look for partners outside, I think relationships starts internally. If you are not at peace in an organization, you cannot deliver. So where I'm sitting in Afrea, if my board is not working and my secretariat is not working, if the relationship is not good, you cannot actually convince anyone else to partner with you from the outside. So it starts with that, and it requires that as we start on the journey of partnership, we must have strong commitment of the leaders that choose to actually be part of the organizations. I want to also mention that, and bring my short story, that these relationships require core values of trust, respect for one another, stewardship, good stewardship of resources, and acceptance of rewards and liabilities. And I'll give you an example. In Afrea, in 2017, Adeline, and I'm glad she was here, was the president then. And she brokered this relationship with the United States Department of State, the Bureau of Democracy. And we got this project, which was about $500,000. And we are supposed to deliver research made in Africa in 5 countries. I took that on, and we were only able to do 2 because the packaging was not right of this project. And, but the USDS recognized the importance of our relations and said, please use the money to do what you actually want to do. So because of trust and respect, we have done other things, and now we have brokered a second relationship with the American Evaluation Association. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Rossetti, for giving us that bit of background and your story. Marie, your story.
Thank you, and just checking, is this on? Do you hear me fine? Yes, okay, excellent. So let me start by saying what an honor it is to be on this panel with such amazing leaders in the evidence to policy space. And I'd say it's not a coincidence. It is because I know, and 3IE knows several of the panelists from before, and that we're part of a network that can be traced back 15 years to people, to events. So thank you for inviting me. I'd also like to reflect and take a moment to reflect on what the COVID experience meant for relationships and partnerships. And you know, while the urgency of the situation led to some swift formation of new partnerships, evidence alliances and the like, I think many of us felt that it became harder to expand our networks, maybe also even to retain the networks that we had. And for many of you, I think there are quite a few young new faces in the room, and you may have started your professional lives during this time. And you must have felt this issue the most acutely. And so I'm really hoping that you'll take this moment, being many of us in person and missing some of you online, but really to sort of help, you know, and build those networks. They're so important. So I didn't say who I was. My name is Marie Garder. I'm the Executive Director for 3IE and also co-chair for the International Development Coordinating Group of the Campbell Collaboration. But right now, and we'll talk more about that later, right now I just want to say more like who am I as a person? And I would say 2 things. I'm an introvert and an impatient woman. And I have a passion. I have a passion for improving evidence use in development. And I have had to learn, and I'm continuing to learn lessons, some of it very much the hard way, about relationships in order actually to be able to fulfill my and my organization's mission. And so let me mention just 3 lessons or sort of insights I have come to. And please do laugh at all of them. I've been very, very ignorant. So I sincerely thought for the longest time that evidence speaks for itself and that who delivers it should not matter. And we've had a nice session already talking about how that is terribly wrong, probably. And you know, I thought that when people got to hear this clear evidence, and they would just know what to do, they would run with it, and they would, you know, we would all be trying to improve the world with this evidence. Now, how wrong could I be, right? Yeah. And of course, the extent to which disinformation has taken a hold in societies through social media should be, of course, a wake-up call. So the reality is this: the messenger matters, the delivery matters, relationships matter, and of course, incentives matter. And so in order to increase your chance of contributing to change, you basically need to use all those and pull all those levers through partnerships. The other thing I thought when I was younger is that being right was important, and also letting others know I was right. Again, I've learned my lesson, and I didn't find an African proverb, but I found another nice saying that goes like this: immature people always want to win an argument, even at the cost of a relationship. And mature people understand that it's always better to lose an argument and win a relationship. And finally, I also thought, naively, that asking for advice was a sign of weakness. And in fact, and there's now ample scientific evidence to show this, people get happy when they get to give, not when they take. And so some of the best relationships I built during the years are those where I have asked for favors, where I've asked for advice, asked for inputs. And it's also some of the best advice and inputs I have gotten. And in fact, a manager colleague of mine at the World Bank at some point actually summed it up in one sentence. Just remember, Marie, everyone wants to be needed and loved.
Yeah.
And it's amazing advice that I've taken with me. So to sum this up, the lessons that I've learned is really the importance of investing in relationships, both as important in order to be happy and function as a human, but also in order to actually achieve what we all are trying to achieve together. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let's go over to Rona to share her story about why relationships matter and introduce herself again. But I think everyone knows her already, but just to reintroduce yourself again.
I don't think this is working.
No.
Can you hear me now? I'll just use that for a bit as I get started.
Thank you very much. My name is Rona Mijumbi. I wear so many hats, but I think what is really relevant for today, I am the founding director at the Center for Rapid Evidence Synthesis, which we mentioned earlier as your local host, and make use of them. They are dressed a certain way, you'll see them. Make use of them. I also work with the Liverpool School of Tropical Medicine and with their affiliate, the Malawi Liverpool Welcome Program in Blantyre, Malawi, heading the policy unit. And I was also very, very privileged to take over from Ruth, working alongside Siziwe as the co-chair, as the current co-chair of the AEN. But my journey has been long, with evidence, and it's a journey that I'm very proud of. Lots of stories, and I think all my stories are really wrapped around relationships. Having started off almost as a one-man army, with the work that I was doing around rapid evidence synthesis and things like that. But over the 10 or 13 years now, it's really been relationships. And I wish I could talk about each one of them. I have a relationship with people on this stage. But the one thing that I can say, it sounds good when we talk about relationships, and I think we should all be garnering for that. But as a person, so I am an extroverted introvert. Yeah? I hope you've bumped into those definitions of them. I am an introvert. It's okay for me to spend 4 days just chilling out on my own, doing nothing, But then I'm okay with company, But the thing with extroverted introverts is that you get tired at some point. Not really tired, you run out of the steam, that takes you through that time, and you need to recharge. You're not like the extrovert who can go non-stop, okay? So you run out of steam. Now, the most important thing for a person like that is to know when you are out of steam and to know what really takes the steam out of you. Now, that's the same thing for relationships beyond the personal relationship. Even when we make relationships in this evidence world, I think at the end of the day, we have to realize that we are, or should be, extroverted introverts. I don't think that you can go non-stop. You need the time to go back and reflect as an organization, as a single person leading an organization. You need that time to step back and see what it is that's happening with this relationship, what you need to do with it, what needs, sort of resetting. You do need that. And if you don't, you're bound to run out of steam, or they are bound to run out of steam for you, okay? Because what happens with relationships is that it starts with you. You've got to know who you are to be able to offer. And that also means that not every relationship will be right for you, okay? In this space, and especially in our setting, we get a lot of invites to relationships. And because we have a lot of need, especially resource need, it's always looking exciting. Oh, we shall learn this, we shall get monies for this, we shall get the capacity for this, we'll be able to do this. And so we tend to jump in, you know, at every invite. And then somewhere along the way, you begin to get uncomfortable, but you're not too sure how to get out of it. And then, you know, it's going, it's not going, you know, you're giving more than you planned to. You're not even sure what you're giving. Okay, so it starts with you. You've got to know who you are and what you can offer. And so you will know when a relationship comes and maybe it's not for you, okay? And that takes me to the next point. And all of this I have learned more in my adult life, and a lot of it I wish I knew earlier, okay? So it takes me to my next point of, it's so important to be genuine in your relationships. They don't have to be just the personal relationships. We try so hard in our personal relationships, but when it comes to work, we sort of, you know, we create some sort of profile and see how it will go. It doesn't matter so much to us, the whole genuine thing. But I will tell you that it's so important to be genuine in these relationships. Let the people who work with you be sure that when I'm dealing with Ruth, I know what I'm getting. What I see is what I get. It's so important. Learn how to also say no. Okay, it's a difficult one, and I think, you know, one of my very first boss when I was doing, you know, evidence to policy work, has even published, I think, 2 publications about how to say no, you know. We tend to want to give, to want to be good, to want to, you know, and it becomes a bit difficult to say no when you want to say no. And then you stretch yourself out too thin, you say yes to everything, and then you can't deliver. And then the question is, was she as good as she said she was, you know? And it's not actually about you not being good, but you just can't give everything. So I think mine is more of caution, yeah? And also to say, you've got to be in the right place before you get into a relationship. And that right place means knowing yourself and being ready with what you can offer, and also knowing what you can't offer. I think I'll stop there for now.
Thank you very much, Rona. And I think you've seen that they've started somewhere, climbing trees, not knowing that it's cold up there by yourself, trying to be liked as young people, trying to accept all relationships that are available. So I think those are some of the lessons that they've learned, and they've come to this point now. And I think our second question will delve into it a bit more to say, you know, each of them can share how the AEN and or your organization's commitment to relationship building has changed the landscape of evidence use in Africa or in the continent. And also please feel free to sort of interact with each other's responses and enrich the discussions even more, or challenge each other in this discussion. So I think for this question, I would like to start with you, Marie, to share your insights on this one.
Okay, thank you. So 3IE as an organization has always been what I would call a connector or a network weaver. I was thinking of spider, but that sounds negative, so I'm not going to go there. In the early days, when we were more of a grants management organization, especially in the impact evaluation space. And what we would do then was to connect grantees with funders, policymakers with researchers, funders with funders. In fact, one of our earliest policy windows in which we connected important government programs that needed evaluation with researchers and evaluators was here in Uganda, in collaboration with the Office of the Prime Minister. 15 years on, so this was 15 years ago, 50 years on, we continue to be a connector, and we benefit from those 15 years of having created and learned from and built networks. However, the landscape has changed, and so has 3IE's approach. So we now have a much more what they call a holistic approach in which we work with governments and development institutions very much as a long-term partner to help them meet their evidence needs and to support them on their journeys to institutionalize evidence use in their institutions. And we do so explicitly through partnerships in all our programs. And we are very clear now about the fact that we do not have all the required skill sets in all the approaches that may be required. We also do not have the right networks, the right contextualized understanding, and that we can and have to and should draw upon all our partnerships. And so we are committed to making strong complementary partnerships, basically our way of working. Now, 3IE has been associated with Africa Evidence Network since its inception, we're proud to say. The network was founded in 3IE's Colloquium of Systematic Reviews in International Development in Dhaka, Bangladesh, in December 2012. So 3IE played a role in the birth of this amazing and important network. But you know, at the time, there was no other network explicitly focusing on EIDN, which you've all heard today what it means several times in the intro. And so congratulations to Ruth again for having had the vision to create this and the stamina to get to where we are today. It's fantastic. 3IE is also partnered earlier on with AFREA. Our inaugural conference had 700 attendees in 2009 in Cairo. And at that time, what I recall, it was that the discussion and the landscape was very different. It was very polarized. There was sort of almost a methods war out there, and a lot of straw men being thrown out into the discussions. And so I would say this has fortunately changed over time. I think the field, we have grown up a bit. I love, you know, a lot of what Adeline said, that there's still a lot of way to go, but I think we are much more on a mutual listening mode than we were at the time. A key topic that we brought to and learned more about in subsequent AEN conferences, we've been to all of them ever since the creation of the network. We delved into this issue of uptake and use of research evidence, and you know, and the importance of networks and incentives to really drive this forward. And so 3IE has developed tools, among others, to verify claims about research influence. These are called contribution tracing, and we've started assembling these verified evidence use stories in a portal. And so I'd like for my colleagues, Durgadas and Tanvi, to stand up, just so people who want to know more about this can go and talk to them, and they can show you the portal. Thank you. Now, one of the lessons we have learned is that decision makers and evaluators do not always know what evidence they need to inform what decisions. And we can talk about evidence in abstract, but very different types of evidence are needed for different decision points. And so one of the things we have developed recently, as you know, come out of these discussions we've had, among others, at AEN conferences and other places, is a tool, a sort of menu of services that tells you, sort of is focused on questions, and then for this question, here's the kind of method you would need. This is would be the source of a possible source of evidence. And so this tool, the menu of services, is something that we think will be useful. And I'd like my colleague Thomas Kelly, could you stand up so people can see you? He joined us recently as Director of Evidence to Policy and Learning, and he can tell you more about this tool and how to find it. I think there's a QR code somewhere. And then
He's showing something.
3IE is also known, I hope some of you, many of you have heard about our evidence gap maps, which are in 3IE innovation, an invention really. And we've led many sessions at the Africa Evidence Network conferences on how to make these and use these, what are they good for. And so I'd like to, again, just showing everybody who my team are so that you know who to reach out to. For Bertha Snilstad and Etienne Mwamba to stand up. If you want to sort of know more about anything to do with synthesis and evidence gap maps, including our Africa evidence map, please reach out to them. And over time, these EGMs have been a tool that we have sort of both further developed and that had been taken up by many of you probably in this room, and we have sort of learned from your use and development again of these maps. So it's sort of like an iterative learning that has been going on over the years. And it's fantastic to see how this tool has been taken up. Particularly, we worked a lot with ACE and more recently SACE in close collaboration in developing evidence gap maps and other rapid synthesis products. And just to mention a few themes that I think are particularly of relevance to the problems of today that we have recently developed maps in. There are now evidence maps on things like democratic backsliding, democracy, human rights, governance, disinformation. These are the kind of maps where we draw, what do we know from effectiveness and evidence on what works to address these issues and where are the research gaps. Through our partnerships with Clear EAA, we assisted the Department of Planning, Monitoring and Evaluation of the Government of South Africa with their national evaluation policy and establishing their impact evaluation guidelines. We've also worked in close partnership with the West African Development Bank, BOAD, on a variety of initiatives and helping them institutionalize the use of evidence. We also have a West Africa Capacity Building and Impact Evaluation Program, and we have many colleagues that are related to that program here present. It has been supported mainly by the Hewlett Foundation, but also importantly by BOAD itself and also the West Africa and Economic and Monetary Union. And it's a regional initiative that promotes the institutionalization of evaluation in national and local level government systems across 8 countries in Francophone West Africa. And in WASI, how we operate is really that it is demand-driven by policymakers and their advisors. What kind of questions do they have that are urgent, and what can we do to help respond to those quickly, either by rapid evidence synthesis or by evaluations. Now we also, in WASI, we've also worked closely with ASED. I believe ASED is also represented here. And include some of the things that we've developed in partnership are easy-to-use guide on using evidence for decision makers at various stages of a project. Now, so basically, just to sum up, 3IE has been able to contribute to and benefit from a much richer and professionalized evaluation and evidence broker network in Africa. And our new strategy is focused on further deepening our regional focus, both in Africa and South Asia, and really doing so with and through partnerships. So looking forward to our further discussions over the next days. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Marie. I think you can see how Marie demonstrated how they invested in relationships at 3IE. So as they celebrate 15 years, you can see there are so many milestones that they are sharing, lessons that they've learned in making sure that they build sustainable relationships to grow the work that they are doing. So I'll go over to Ruth to also share how she has committed to building our relationships. Maybe before Ruth speaks, can I ask at the back to be prepared to play the video towards the end of the session so that we're able to share that journey as well.
Thank you very much, Siziwe, and thank you to Marie and the support of 3IE to the network over a very long period of time. Somebody once asked me, how do I think that AEN contributes to the ecosystem, the evidence ecosystem in Africa? What can we do to deepen, institutionalize, and shape the systems for evidence? And I think relationships are at the core of that. And I think it's the relationships, your ecosystem, and you are part of the ecosystem. We are the evidence ecosystem in Africa. And so we need to think about how we can form meaningful relationships that have a long-lasting impact on our continent and the work that we do. And it's easy to say, let's be friends, right? And to build a one-to-one relationship. But it's much harder to think about how to deepen those into team relationships and organizational relationships. And more than that, relationships that will survive disagreements, conflict, and difficulty, and that survive when individuals leave. And Rona, I never asked if I could tell this story. I apologize. Can I tell you a story about you and me? Okay. Rona and I mostly became colleagues and friends because at different times one of us was feeling ill.
Yeah.
And so we covered for each other. So I would get a message from Rona saying, I feel really ill, but I can't tell my boss. Cover for me at the dinner, please. And I did many similar things where I would say, Rona, you need to chair this session. I feel really ill. And because we were asking for help and we had things in common that were nothing to do with our work, we built a relationship of trust. Now, we could have left it there and been great friends. Our children greet each other online, you know, when they come and wave on the screen, yeah. But that's not going to change or build the Africa evidence ecosystem. And we have built relationships between our teams and relationships that continue when we're not there and relationships that continue across the Africa Evidence Network and that move from being individual relationships to team relationships and even contractual relationships sometimes and relationships that survive without us. So when we think about how the Africa Evidence Network makes an impact across the evidence work that we're doing, I would really point to that it's about making a friend, and then it's about taking that friendship to something meaningful and collaborative and productive, and building the trust that means that even when you don't agree on something, you have the courage to share what's gone wrong. Rona has always laughed at us because those of us in South Africa thought we knew how to do rapid response. And we went to a peer learning workshop with Rona's team. And I think you said that, like, for the first 30 minutes, all we did was tell you what went wrong. We tried it went wrong, this went wrong, this went wrong, this went wrong. And you were generous enough to support us in working out how to make sure it didn't go wrong the next time. So these relationships can go back many years. They require trust. They require that genuine self that you were talking about, not just genuine self of who we are as individuals, but who we are in our teams and what's good, what's gone well and what's gone badly, and a willingness to share. And I'm very excited that across the Africa Evidence Network, it's not just 5,000 individuals, but it's hundreds of organizations. And that we are now moving to a phase where we're beginning to build really strong relationships between our teams. And I think that's really exciting for the future. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Ruth, for those insights. I think Rona has the mic.
Okay.
Let's use it.
No problem.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. I think when you ask the question, how have our organizations kind of shaped the ecosystem, I was actually thinking for us it's the other way around, how the ecosystem has actually shaped us. Because when you look back, we started off with a mission. We knew what we wanted to do. We wanted to provide evidence in a timely manner you know, for decisions that were going to come from policymakers. We knew, you know, we had a very good model. We knew the capacities that we needed. And then very, very quickly, I remember within, you know, less than a few months, we were when we presented our first, so it started as a pilot. And when we presented our results after 6 months, you know, there was this immediate interest. Like, okay, how do you do that? You know, because just before we started the work, there was, again, work that had been commissioned by the World Health Organization that actually showed that what we were trying to do doesn't work, you know? And so we were only given 6 months to prove the concept, or, you know, we'll just continue with what was already known, that it doesn't work. So after 6 months, we were able to, you know, show something different, and so there was interest. And the very first thing I remember was, will you host a team and show them what you do? That wasn't part of the plan. We were supposed to do our things, you know, like good researchers, scientists. You sit in your little box, churn out something, send it to where it was supposed to go. Now, this is about bringing us people. What do we do with that? There was no plan for that. But they also didn't speak English, okay? So how is this even supposed to work, okay? But we said yes, and we hosted a team from Burkina Faso, Ministry of Health, trying to build capacity like on the job. So we are receiving questions from the Ministry of Health in Burkina Faso. They're in French. They tell us what needs to be done. We do it in English. We translate. They send it back. You know, so it went on that way for a while. Very quickly, next was Cameroon, Zambia, you know, and we quickly had to rethink, you know, our strategy and what we had planned to do. But this is not on an additional budget. Okay, so you're kind of reshaping, and again, you have the choice of saying, I don't have a budget for it, you know, so we can't do it, or we don't speak English, so we're not too sure how we're going to take care of these people who are coming. So you have those choices. But very quickly, we also got interest beyond Africa. We were speaking to friends in Latin America, in Eastern Europe, you know, and things were going from one place to another. I could tell a longer story, but I think what I'm coming to is that where we are, we might say we have contributed, and I could talk about some of our contributions, but I think the ecosystem has also contributed to our growth. We could have stayed that, you know, model that we had built and said, this is what we want to do, okay? All we do is to provide the evidence. We don't do this other stuff. We didn't plan for it. But I think the ecosystem has shaped us to actually realize where the need is. So the need was, yes, with the policymakers, they need evidence. The evidence is not coming through as fast. But we also realize the need for the capacities to do this. And if we choose to run the rest alone, and we have colleagues who would like to do this, but we don't have space for them, we could have stayed, you know, that same person or that same group, that same model, and I guess we would still have had work to do. But the ecosystem has shown us what is valuable, and I think looking back now, we appreciate who we are, you know. We've formulated lots of relationships out of stuff like that, lots and lots of relationships, which we have gained from as well. I could walk into Burkina Faso now, and my room, I do have a room at the Ministry of Health, you know, just out of a relationship like that. I think I could get citizenship very easily in South Africa, yeah? Am I stretching it a little too? Yeah? But I think there's lots of stuff that we have gained as an organization, lots of relationships that we are riding on to build our own capacity. And so the ecosystem has shaped us as well. But we have also, maybe what we have come with then to the field is a lot of lesson sharing and building capacity and, you know, innovating or putting our foot out where everybody thinks, are you sure of what you're doing, you know? We've been brave enough to put our foot out there, not once, not twice, and tested a few things. And then these have become a model that people have, gone out, modified in their own way, but at least it proves the concept and people are able to go out there and start on that. Lots of work around rapid evidence synthesis, lots of work around citizen panels, lots of work around pictorial evidence, for what did we call them? Unempowered populations, okay? So a lot of the evidence synthesis has depended on people being able to read and write. And, there's that gap in what do you do with people who have to make decisions, but they can't read your nice synthesis, they can't read your policy briefs, but they also, are unable to come and interact, in dialogues or panels. So testing out with pictorial evidence. And so we have brought that, and people have, picked up the model, tested it, come back, critiqued what we have done, but very friendly critiquing that has helped us also build ourselves and done a really good job. And, the building of capacity, I think we're so proud of that. Just being able to host, other evidence brokers. We don't have the answers, they come, we make the mistakes together, we learn together, teams go away, they come back. There are particular countries that we've hosted more than 3 times, 3 different groups, but then they also host us. We go, we do a lesson sharing. Every year, before the pandemic disorganized us, but we're getting back on track. We had this lesson sharing with ACE and other stakeholders in South Africa. And it's not that you've come to share answers, but to interrogate, methods, interrogate how things are done in your context, in their context. And there's a lot that we have learned from that space as well. So I think much as we might have brought something, we do appreciate how much the ecosystem has formulated and modified what we see today as the Center for Rapid Evidence Synthesis. There's no way we would have been what we are without, that consideration of what's happening around us.
Thank you very much, Rona. Rossetti?
Thank you very much, Rona. You said it's difficult, rather to sometimes not every relationship is ours.
Yes.
We should say no. Sometimes you are in a tight corner and you have nothing to start with, but you need work to be done. And therefore, sometimes what we do is to make sure that you look for the good in a partner and in a relationship. What is good inside there? Because sometimes we've met instances where when you say no to one relationship, the noise goes and everybody says, she said no, don't go there. So everybody says no, and then you have nobody to work with. So in brand development, sometimes we have to weigh the options, but that was a very good idea. And on this question about what footprint, we are glad as a FREA, and I'm glad this morning the presentation which was given by Adeline underlined the work that AFREA has been working on around Made in Africa, making sure we remove this Korean, that word is so hard, but you know it, you have understood, the one we are discussing this morning. Yes. So we have had a long history at AFREA since 2007 with the Sule Galiba, may he rest in peace, and many others, Bagele, who have worked so hard on this concept and made sure that we continue making our eyes look in the direction of using indigenous knowledge. And we are continuing to ask you to continue doing more research, more work, so that the questions that were posed by Adeline can be answered. We should publish what we have found, because one of the things that we have challenges with is publishing. Many people are doing research and doing kinds of writings, but they don't find their way in African journals. For instance, the African Evaluation Journal, which is available to all of us. So we need to publish and say what we have found. The other area where we have worked in a very special way is incorporating the youth in the agenda of evaluation in Africa through the Young and Emerging Evaluators Network. And they also have about 40 associations working around Africa on different aspects, even including working on the evaluation plans for the future. So we have gone as far as also incorporating 2 young and emerging evaluators on the AFREA board, one representing the Anglophone and one representing the Francophone. One thing that we all need to work on is that many of us are in the ECD space, but we have worked a lot with the Anglophone side. So every time we look for things to do with the Francophone, we can't find it. Even getting a leader who is credible from that side, it's not that they are not there, but we are not caring enough. So going forward, we would like to collaborate and see that more work also goes on the side of the Francophone and bringing Africa together so that we don't do, usually we say, this is a Francophone meeting and this is an Anglophone session. And in that way, we don't bring the views across Africa together. So we need to actually start bringing all these people together and translate, even in terms of writing. Now, I had an opportunity this year to visit Mozambique, the Lusophone, and they were saying, you guys, you don't care about us. It's as if you are in your own world. So we are challenged. They actually are a paid-up member of AFREA now. And they said, okay, we are going to look for the rest to bring them on board. So as we continue our relationships, we need to reach out. Because some of the lessons we've seen is that as we progress, we start pulling ropes and working in silos and competing instead of being complementary. And that's what the Global North loves, that they find you so weak. When you come to my side, I'm saying something against AEN, and AEN is saying something against E3IA, and all sorts of things. So we need to develop a brand that cannot be torn as we do the relationships. So I would like to also encourage us that we speak the same language. We are trying to work on all this. Of course, resources are required to make us work together. Maybe we need a fund which is African to actually progress research, maybe evaluation on Made in Africa, but one fund which is managed for that purpose, so that you don't have to go to Europe, because recently we have very many people from the Global North knocking on our doors. Everybody's saying, okay, what are you working on? Made in Africa. I want to know that. Can I take it away? How can we dissect it? And therefore, we have like 5 people saying, I have the money. It's here. Why don't you take it? So what are we doing in Africa? Why don't we pull resources and choose the agenda we want to work on, and we all work in the same direction, and also fulfilling the 2063 agenda? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much to all our speakers. I think we also acknowledge our online audience. We'll go to them in a bit to make sure that we see if there's any inputs or questions from that side. We'll also come to this audience in the room, maybe get 2 questions, but I think let's do the video, because I think it's the right time in terms of us, the 4 organizations sitting here that have more than 10 years experience in building relationships and making a difference in the landscape and in the EIDM, to also take time to share the journey of the AEN.
We know that using the best available evidence to inform decisions can help ensure that those decisions make a difference to the challenges we face. But there are many barriers to using evidence, and groups all over the world are trying to address these. At the Africa Evidence Network, we believe that we can only find answers and have an impact by working together. In 2012, 23 African delegates met at an evidence conference in Bangladesh. They discovered not only their shared sense of isolation in working to support evidence-informed decision-making, but more importantly, their mutual desire to connect with others in this field from their own continent. The network's founding chair, Ruth Stewart, described the energy when these delegates recognized that together they could achieve more than they ever would achieve alone. Their agreement to share training opportunities and collaborate on funding proposals began before the delegates had even returned home. From the start, the network's impact was achieved through connections. For instance, when the network facilitated mentoring between some researchers and a team at the South African Department for Basic Education, it was such a success that other government departments requested similar mentoring relationships. A monitoring and evaluation team supporting district fisheries in rural Malawi was mentored in how to strengthen their data collection, and as a result, the Malawian district team was able to ultimately increase the output of those local fisheries. Another AEN member reported that through being connected to the evidence resources shared by the network, they were able to scale up their school feeding scheme to eventually include all 200 schools in their region. In 2014, the Africa Evidence Network held its first Pan-African Evidence event. Over 100 delegates attended from 10 African countries. That meeting would prove central to ensuring the work that had started in Bangladesh was sustained. Members described how incredible it felt to receive encouragement from others working in this field a mere 2 years after the AEN had been formally established. From across Africa, stories were shared about how evidence was needed and being used. Government colleagues made it clear that supporting evidence into policy is not an easy task. The relationships are sensitive and need serious investment to build working partnerships that span long-established divides. Still, the work continued, and by mid-2015, the AEN had 350 network members and organic engagement on its digital platforms growing every month. And the network started getting noticed by others outside of Africa. You wanted to work in the evidence space in Africa? The AEN became the go-to community, and colleagues from around the world in governments, NGOs, and universities started to reach out. Our biennial events became well-established, more innovative, and continuously better at showcasing how the African evidence community was pushing the boundaries in this field. By 2016, the network was actively encouraging and promoting evidence-informed decision-making across Africa, contributing to the development of effective public policies and efficient implementation of services. Our focus was on joint learning to support one another to use evidence to tackle poverty and equality. As the network grew, our members began hosting events across several countries: South Africa, Uganda, Kenya, Malawi, Zimbabwe, Ghana, Cameroon, Nigeria, and more. Each event provided a forum where participants could share lessons and advance discussions in supporting evidence use in Africa. The events increased engagement and built trusted relationships with institutions and professionals in the field. These opportunities to connect have led to work that deepens evidence-informed decision-making in Africa, such as the relationship between an evidence team in West Africa and a global evidence funder, and strengthened partnerships amongst East African researchers, government officials, and parliamentary researchers. The power of proximity to begin a relationship had already been demonstrated in the AEN's own origin story. The Secretariat knew how powerful hosting these spaces for relationships to flourish was to advancing the evidence agenda. By 2018, with the support of funding from the William and Flora Hewlett Foundation, the AEN's evidence gatherings were reaching over 500 individuals across 32 countries through online and in-person engagements. These engagements spanned sectors and enabled evidence producers and users to connect with one another, shifting the boundaries yet again in the evidence landscapes across the region. Recognizing the difficulty of navigating the multiple disciplines, methodologies, and sectors of the evidence field, the AEN wanted to support new and emerging leaders, so the Africa Evidence Leadership Award was launched. Winners of the award won the opportunity to showcase their work, building their own profiles and promoting the use of evidence. Over the years, winners have reported how receiving the award has helped advance their careers and invigorated them to embark on new ventures to support the use of evidence in their countries. In the network's routine collection of stories of change about how evidence makes a difference across Africa and how the AEN makes a difference to those working in the evidence space, it is not uncommon to discover examples of how these relationships have flourished. For instance, the story of Effective Basic Services Africa. This Cameroonian NGO that works to make basic services more effective by applying the available research to service delivery received an international award for their work supporting evidence use during the COVID-19 pandemic after a nomination from an AEN member. Luvuyo Jalisa, one of our emerging evidence leaders, was recently named one of the top 200 young South Africans. The way AEN members support and strengthen one another extends far beyond meeting at a conference. In 2019, a new idea to connect members emerged. The premise was the same: share members' work and make connections, although the space was a little different. All members met virtually for what became Africa Evidence Week. This virtual event, hosted on social media, showcased and promoted the use of evidence. Members volunteered and shared their experiences, challenges, and successes. Each week sees close to 1,000 people engaging in over 100 dedicated activities from organizations and individuals that span the continent. When the storm that was 2020 and the COVID-19 pandemic hit the world, the AEN became a conduit through which members provided evidence in response to numerous requests from policymakers and public service organizations. And that year, our evidence event went fully online with over 600 people from 44 countries joining a fully interactive and learning experience. The AEN's virtual work had deepened since then, with online communities of practice formed and facilitated to collectively advance solutions for challenging issues. Out of such a community of practice, the network's manifesto for capacity development for evidence-informed decision-making in Africa was born. As the network, its membership and its impacts have all grown, so its influence has extended beyond Africa. The network proudly mentored and supported emerging evidence coalitions in Latin America in 2021 and 2022. The AEN's work shows no sign of slowing. In 2023, the network launched an evidence podcast where new topics are explored with a range of contributors. And the newly launched Africa Evidence Youth League is stimulating, innovating, and breaking new ground. New communities of practice are formed as members gather online to explore solutions to how to meaningfully expand the ways in which evidence is valued, to embrace forms of knowledge often overlooked, and to ensure localization of evidence use is meaningful and long-lasting. 2022 marked a decade since the 23 delegates from Africa met at that evidence conference in Bangladesh. Those first members could never have known that their meeting would result in a network of nearly 5,000 people. As evidence-informed policy in Africa continues to thrive, so too does this network where you can connect with others also looking to make a difference. Although we do not know what the future will bring, we do know that only together will evidence-informed decision-making become a reality.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I see there's beeping that our time is up a bit. I want to say I think the video sort of brings together the conversation that we've just had. The video is available on the AEN YouTube website, so you can go look at it at your own time as well. So I think just to wrap up the session, Hazel, is there any questions online or comments?
Thank you, Siziwe, and thank you to this interesting panel. I'm here to present the evidence of an engaged online audience through lovely comments and interesting questions that have been posted on the chat. So the first question is from Carolyn. What are your thoughts around legislating evidence for policy, as they do in the US, compelling policymakers to use evidence? And how do you ensure the quality of evidence in a world where interests seep in? That's the first question. The second one is, I think it's posed to Rossetti. Are there journals specialized in publishing articles on evidence based in Africa, as most international journals are costly or expensive? And then the last one is a comment from Kululeko. Thank you for extremely beautiful journeys. In your experience, how do we sustain relationships between organizations when leadership visions and approaches change over time? If in the worst case, we stand at cross purposes, should we always strive to realign? Thank you.
Thank you very much to the online audience. I don't know who's going to take the first one, because the second one is specific to someone in particular. Then the third one, someone must pick it as well, just to make sure that we share some insights in the shorter period that we are having remaining. Yes.
I know we're out of time, so I'm going to give you a quick answer. I don't think it's worked very well in the United States, so I don't think we should copy it.
Thank you very much. I work in a public sector, and compelling policymakers does not work very well. They choose, the evidence varies across spectrum, and they will choose what they want to use and from where. And most cases, they will choose what has been researched in public sector itself, not from everywhere. Now, the publishing, we have the African Evaluation Journal, which has been around for as many years as almost 20. And there are costs, but they are not very high because we subsidize them. And we put in something at the publisher and say, if someone is coming, for instance, from a French-speaking country, we want to subsidize 100%, and then maybe a little bit less for English-speaking, and then again subsidize for young and emerging evaluators, because we want to bring them on board. So yes, there's an opportunity, and we have an editorial team led by Mark. We can give more details as we go along. But I want to appreciate also the presidents that have led AFREA. I see Serge there. I don't know if there's any other AFREA president, Adeline, and then myself. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rossetti. The third one, who would like to tackle it for us?
Can I go on the first one as well?
Yeah, any. Going to take.
First of all, just briefly to say, because I disagree slightly. First of all, some of this will be the discussion in the session later today around, institutionalizing evidence use, so a little heads up to that. And I would just say, I think definitely alone it's not going to work. Organizations have tried legislating, and it can easily become a box-ticking exercise, as I think. But if you can do that together with other things, together with training, together with the right incentives, etc., I think that is something worth looking at, and so, some amount of evidence that may be working. But as I said, alone not. And then just a plea relating to legislation and politics. You know how decision makers, and especially politicians, are very different from evaluators. They basically have to take a stand. They see one side, and you all see all the sides, right? So evaluators are very sort of different from the typical decision makers. And I would plea that more of you basically at some point get off the fence and maybe sort of join in politics because of your critical mindsets. I think that is exactly what is also needed in policy making, in decision making. And so I'll stop with that plea.
Thank you. I think you said it very well. On the first question, I wanted to really say that you can't think about legislation on its own. What is supporting, or what are the other interventions in place? So to get the policymakers to do, or to use evidence, one, they need capacity, and I think many of them don't really have the optimal capacity, to be able to use the evidence as the way we think they should be doing it, or the way we think is optimal. And that, I'm hesitant because it's also problematic. It puts the focus on us, but they too, have reasons for what they do. And so one is being able to build that capacity for them to see beyond, say, the evidence coming from the public service. That is what they know. Okay, how do you get them then to give an eye to anything else? So there is that part that we kind of expect them to do stuff which they might not be capacitated for. But also there's need for incentives. And I don't say incentives the way we generally think about them in terms of, is there a reward for them to do it? But there also need to be system incentives that sometimes it's actually difficult to get to the evidence or to use it or to make sense of it. And so the system needs to have incentives that put a policymaker in a place where, it's easier for them to use the evidence than to use their gut feeling. And many of the times, you're going to put legislation in place and these incentives are not there and it will still fall flat on its face. How to sustain relationships, in changing organizations, changing, settings, changing contexts. I think relationships will naturally, some of them will naturally die off, okay? And others will begin to build. And there will be those that are here to last forever, okay? So I think, when you take that time that we talked about, that you step back and always analyze and stay in touch with yourself, and what's happening around the ecosystem, you will know which or what is happening with which relationship, and you won't really struggle. But that's not to say that it all works out. All relationships are hard work. There's work to be put in. So don't get into a relationship, whether it's personal or for the organization, and think, okay, we signed that MOU, now we're good. Okay, there'll be work to do. All relationships need nurturing, but that's a story for another day.
Thank you very much. We've run out of time, really. I think the people that are in person, we have access to these amazing women. So please engage with them and make sure that if you have any question, get them to answer those questions for you. And I think I would like to thank them very much for participating in this panel. And also I would like to encourage women that are attending this event, and particularly the young and emerging leaders that are joining us as well, to take time to step up, make a difference in terms of the work that we do. And I also want to connect this session. This is women that are experienced. The session 22 on the last day, the session of young and emerging leaders that are going to say, what does the future look like as driven by us, young and emerging leaders? So please join that session to connect and see how they hand over the baton to them. It is time, right?
Yes.
Thank you so much, everyone, for joining the session.
Yeah.
Minutes. Okay, there's a 15 minutes break now, and then the next session will kick in. All right? There's one session here, and then there's one in the breakout room. Just check your pocket program and see which one you are interested in and join. All right.
Call me later. Me, I want to be your lover. Call me later. ba 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 da ba. Totoro, baby, take my number. Call me like that. Me, I want to be your lover. Oli chibiriti wakubisa mutima ndikuma vivyo mukwano gwochanga kayembe wankubisa mutida ochakala nyone mamalodi bebe osiba muchikuba kasana kaka ndikuma vivyo mukwano gwocha omawobulire obasentononya wano muchikunta tenti waliwe chibuzo bono sala kochenti city boy baby beaty kind of villain chimanyo kutekushua imwe birungo kutekushua ole kushu chimanyo kutekushua imwe birungo kutekushua ole kushu nakuyise kocho na matekwebo nenkuteka kumizani vipi chimanye vipi mogo vya wela nagombe koko kumasaji you are romantic fun you are fantastic ipate mudu ripoti tuiteko kusomelo tufune wea kambo nyumi rabu pote posais ebina sala koku weiti ebina buga mone posais stamina. Wait for us at the same time to come out. Me and you at the same time. Never want to leave Roma. Dance with me, oh man. I pull up on your beach, oh man. It's time to. Baby girl, make it know the lie. Make it different. Say you the view this guy. Don't even waste time. Why I can't wait to make your gracious mine. It's not a lie. You set my soul on fire. So many girls I passed through. None of them girls find passion. All of the things you've been through, but this life will never be the same again. Will never be the same again. Will never be the same again. Will never be the same. Too bad for you. Don't mind them, they too bad for you. They say me, I too. Break it all, break it, take it all. When your waist won't take it all. When I wanna take it all. Even if I die, wake it all, wake it, take it all. Even if I die, wake it all. Baby, girl, make it know the light. Make it tell your friends, say you don't feel the sky. Don't even waste time. I'm in Hawaii. I can't wait to make your precious smile. It's not a lie. Woti warom koto. When they go do the entire party, all they call them go shake your body, shake your body. Halua bana we gonna belly. You got the money, you they go police. Me and they love you for it. Get it. What's he water? Them say I the grace and no number. But the display on the money on the it's supposed to not serve enough when you come so Gaga go make you no go dollar. When they go do the entire party, all they got them go shake your body. Hello, up and now we gonna belly. You got the money, you take all police. Me and they love you for it. Get it. Woti warom kota. Get it. come and go.
You come and go, why?
You come and go.
Yeah.
Thank you, Herbert.
Thank you so much.
Tumongereza amanyi mwana oyo. Herbert, thank you. Mwana gwe mukama yakuwa n'omala. Why.
Njagala nnyo mukyale panka.
Why.
Kabule baba.
Kabulengana.
Bulengane go akula kabina.
Kabulengana.
Njagala nnyo mukyale panka.
Oyagala kuweki.
Kabule baba. Bulengane go akula kabina. No kawuba n'ogirwa newaki. Bulungi bwo bwe bukuseeza. Empisa zo ze zikutonda. Kabule baba. Kimanye tubakwana bangi abalina kashi n'abatalina nsimbi. See what I'm fighting now when you feel the right, single ladies all around. Njagala nnyo banva nnungi enva zaabwe ziri ku byuma. Njagala nnyo wini munyenga amaaso goli gali ku byuma. Let's around make a miracle, let your body move to the pinnacle. Let's around make a miracle, let your body move. Njagala nnyo mukyale panka. Kabule baba. Bulengane go akula kabina. No kawuba n'ogirwa newaki. Bulungi bwo bwe bukuseeza. Empisa zose zikutonda. Kabule baba. Never waste your time, never let you go. Talk down, back to back, you're the best I know. Oh yeah, you did blow my mind, blow my mind, blow my mind. For your love, I could change my life. Come here, do you dance like a spirit? That's the one for me, nice and slow. So many nights I don't wait for my time to get you all alone for one night. You do me something no lie, I come out for your turn. I want to do you whatever you want. Freaky for you. Show me what you're. Girl, you just blow my mind, blow my mind. Your body just blow my mind. Girl, you just blow my mind, blow my mind. Your body just blow my mind. Allow me to love you now. Allow me to hug you now. Allow me to touch you right. Allow me to love you now. Allow me, yeah. Buy me armor, or you can you give me dollar. I wanna be your baby mama.
Why?
Oli musuli sana, jigiri sevi sana, jigiri sandi lana. If you wanna be my lover, keep me by your shoulder. You are the one, wanna be with you all day. When come missing, I feel so lonely. Katikwata wano, nyweza wano, lete no, vera wano, katikwata wano.